Thank you for joining us for this presentation on ISA's Dissertation Completion Fellowship, this info session. We ask that you use the Q&A if you have any questions throughout the presentation. You can submit them, and then there'll be a Q&A session at the end. Okay, I'm going to hand it over, and we'll get started.
All right. Well, welcome to this webinar where we're going to be talking about ISA's Dissertation Completion Fellowship. I'm Ann Towns. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden, and I'm chair of the DCF committee. And I'm here today together with Olivia Rutazibwa, who's at the LSE, and she's also a member of the ISA committee. Then we have some people from the ISA here, thankfully, that might be able to support us as well. We have Kat Poker, who's program assistant, and then some tech help from Joel and Hannah. So during the webinar, I'm going to be taking you through the details of what this fellowship is about, what the application process looks like, what the assessments would look like, and so forth. Okay? And the outline, or like what we'll be doing, and maybe 8 or 9 slides or so, is something like this. So we'll talk about the purpose of the fellowship, who the committee members are, what the call for application looks like, the eligibility criteria for the application, what materials you need to submit and when, what the assessment process looks like, and then where you can find some more information. And then we will end with a Q&A where you can ask questions, because there will always be questions that I haven't covered and that you can't, whose answers you can't find online. And Olivia will be taking over the Q&A session, so she'll run that. She has more experience than I do too, because she's been a member of this committee already for a year. All right, so starting with the purpose of the Dissertation Completion Fellowship, the point or the aim of it is to help students in the later stages of the PhD program, typically in the last 2 years of the program, to offset the costs that they have as a result of research or writing activities that are necessary to complete in a successful way the dissertation. The fellowship is open to applicants from across the social sciences and humanities, but the applications need to be about a dissertation that is on international studies in some way as broadly defined, but something that has to do with some sort of cross-national process. Right? And the DSC is open to all eligible graduate students that are members of the ISA. But as a committee, we particularly encourage people from groups, genders, and nationalities that have been underrepresented historically in the field of international studies. Okay. You may ask for up to $5,000 to cover the expenses that you have to complete your dissertation. But if you need less, the application can also be for less than $5,000. I just need to state that as a committee, it's our sole discretion to award lesser amounts than requested as we see appropriate. Okay. The committee group is a committee that's a standing committee of the ISA, and that means that we're appointed by the ISA leadership and that we serve 2-year terms, and they're rotating. So half of the committee has served a year already. Half of us are new, so I'm new to the team, and I'm also chair of the team. Olivia Rutazibwa, who I already introduced, is also here with us today. She's already served for 1 year, and she's from the London School of Economics and Political Science. And then we have 3 members who are not with us today. Efe Tokdemir from Bilkent University in Turkey. We have Sam Apundo from Vassar College in the US. And Alex Barter from Florida International University, who's also in the United States. And if you want to read more about us, you can either look us up online or you can look at the brief description of the committee members in the link that I've pasted below. Why we have this webinar today is to kind of go through the call for applications and the criteria for selections and what you need to do, right, to be part of this. You can find the current call for applications on the ISA webpage, and I've pasted the link here, and that should be your authoritative source. What it says there on the webpage, that's kind of what, those are the rules, regardless of what we say here. The application process itself opens on July 1st, so you don't need to be sending us anything, or you can't really send us anything before that. okay? And the application process is a two-step process of sorts. So first, if you're interested in applying, right, you first need to send an email to fellowship@isanet.org to obtain a link, a secure link to upload that enables you to upload your application materials. And then once you have that link and you've written your application, you should upload the materials as one PDF file directly to the secure link. Your first and last name should be clearly specified in the file heading. And this is important for us because it makes the process much smoother for us later when we go through the assessment of what is usually a sizable chunk or number of applications. The deadline for applications is September 1st. So you need to upload your file on or before September 1st. Eligibility criteria, and there are a lot of them. First of all, applicants must be ISA members, okay, and in order to be able to apply, and you must maintain your membership during the fellowship year. You must also be doctoral candidates or the equivalent by the time the award is received. You may apply before achieving candidacy, but you can't receive funding without proof of candidacy or equivalent confirmation of permission to proceed to PhD thesis dissertation. As I said before, applicants must be working on a topic in the international studies field. We interpret that very broadly, but it needs to be some sort of trans-border, transnational something, right? It cannot just be like something that has nothing to do with the international at all. Preferences will be given to applicants from underrepresented groups within ISA, as we said before, and that's underrepresented. So I'm going to speak here again, genders, groups, and nationalities that have been historically underrepresented in the field of international studies. We as a committee will prioritize proposals from applicants who are unable to acquire resources to complete your project from other sources. That doesn't mean that you can't have other funding, but we will prioritize proposals from applicants that don't have enough funding for their work. You need to identify all current sources of funding, and you need to clearly identify funding shortfalls, so what your need is, like why you need this funding in order to be able to complete your dissertation. You must use all your funds in a single calendar year, running from January 1st to December 31st. And then you must submit a 500-word final report to the committee or to the committee chair, to me, that details how the funding supported by the Dissertation Completion Fund has been used, okay, by 60 days after the end of the fiscal year. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Application materials now. So to submit your application, you must submit the following, and it consists of a few different things. A proposal, first of all, that lays out the dissertation project, and that should be 1,000 to 1,500 words, which is roughly 2 to 3 pages typically, right? You need also a one-page statement detailing all financial support that you have received through the PhD program. And that includes institutional support from your department, but also other sources such as granting agencies. And that statement should also include a statement of financial need. Okay, so you need to let us know why do you need additional funding in order to complete your dissertation. You also need a one-page narrative budget that details the different kinds of expenses that you will have to complete your dissertation. You need a current CV. Okay, so those 4 pieces: a proposal, statement detailing this financial support that you've received, a one-page budget, a CV, that needs to be combined into PDF, into one PDF and uploaded. In addition to that, you also need a letter of recommendation from your dissertation, your dissertation's major advisor, sorry. And the letter writers, of course, are asked to comment on your merit and institutional support. So they should comment on the things that we've asked from you, right? The quality of your project, the financial support you've received, and what your needs are and your budget. Then all this materials well, except the letter of recommendation, needs to be combined into one PDF file. So you upload this as one PDF file, except for the letter of recommendation. So that will go separately. And you will need to share the secure link that you receive from ISA. You share that with your advisor, and they will use that link then to upload their letter of recommendation. Assessments. So the submissions or your applications are assessed by all members of the DCF committee. There will be at least 2 people on the committee assessing each submission, might be more. Okay. And to be eligible, for us to consider your application, you need to be eligible. Of course, you need to fulfill the eligibility criteria that I listed before. But once we've deemed that you're eligible, we then make the assessment based on 3 criteria: the quality of the PhD project, the fit with the fellowship, and then financial need. Okay, so if 40% of the points, or say that we assign 10 points to each application, 4 of those points is on the quality, 3 is fit with the fellowship, and 3 is financial. And people often ask about the success rate. That varies a lot, right? Depending on how many people apply for the fellowship. So it's varied somewhere between 10 and 47% in the last few years. And that is because of the fluctuations in the number of applicants. So if there are few applicants, there's a higher success rate. All this information I've gone through and a bit more you can find on the ISA's homepage, right? So you can find that here. And with that, I'm going to turn this now over to Olivia for the Q&A session, where you can, if you have questions, and I'm sure you have questions, there are things that we haven't covered, you should write those questions into the Q&A box of the webinar. And if you can't find it, it's under more. Okay.
And so I could see there was already one question, and I'll turn to it immediately. So, and I'll read it out for everyone because I don't know if everyone can see all the question, but the sender asks, they already submitted an email last year and asked for the link and whether they could ask again because they did not applying. So short question answer is yes. So you can for sure just go through the process again. And then a question about timing. So person is submitting at the end of September, but there's a long period of viva pending and correction time can be expected after September, and whether you can still apply for the fund. So what you keep in mind, I think, is that to go through the whole process, the funding won't be dispersed before the new calendar year. So it will be very much in the beginning, like let's say January, for instance. So in your narrative budget, or when you explain what your needs are and how they look like, you should be able to explain what you might need from that point onwards, right? And so that's a calendar year from January, let's say, to January. So if it looks like everything will be finished and you graduate before January, then it's very difficult to make that argument. So that's a timing that I think you can keep in mind. That some of it is future oriented. So if you're already submitting by the time actually that almost the deadline is for this, you'll have to think how long it's going to be extended. I don't know, Anne, if this makes sense, or if you have anything, that. Okay. Another question I see here from Julian. What are the reporting requirements for fellows who obtain the fellowship? So if I remember correctly, you're supposed to write a report once you receive it, and you'll also receive the instructions that come with that. So you write a report back to the committee on how you use them, how you use the funds, and that's about it. So it's true, we haven't given any details of that, but it's not an onerous, like hugely long report that you have to write, but there is a feedback loop in that sense.
I can add that it's 500 words, so it's
500
very short.
words. There you go. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So a following question: do you have to be a registered student at the time of applying and receiving the fellowship? For example, students who are on leave. I think being on leave would still make you officially registered to some extent, right? But you need to have a formal affiliation. I think that's the most important thing. So to be on file in a running project, in a place where you do it. So if it's a formal leave from there, it probably is the extent to which you're still officially affiliated, even if you have an interruption, for instance. But yeah, that's how I would answer it. But I don't know, Anne, if you have.
I don't have anything additional to say. Like, it might be good maybe to email someone and ask, because that
Yeah.
sounds like with a little bit more detail, just to make sure.
Yeah, what the nature of the leave is, right? But I think in
Yes.
general, it's that it's not necessarily open to independent researchers that
Yeah.
are writing the dissertations by their own. It is actually in a context, an institutional context. So you need to be able to show a formal affiliation as a PhD candidate or equivalent. Yeah. But yeah, I think to be sure about the details, it would be good actually if you dropped an email and then you'll get the very correct answer. Okay, next questions. What items cannot be included in the budget proposal? So on the one hand, you have limited amount of space, right? So you have to, choose what you can include or not. But it's not that you can, for instance, not include life-sustaining expenses like, childcare or any of these things, because we have a broad understanding of the need. But what is important in your narrative is that you really draw out how these needs are connected to your research, right? So it's not like I'm not going to research for 5 months, but I need childcare, so I'm just going to put it there. But it's more like how, some of the subsistence needs are need to be met actually in the process of doing the research. So that means that you can include kind of everything. But let's say that you have a lot of funding actually, and maybe you're like full-time supported by your institution, but you're like, oh, it would also be nice if I could just also buy this software to do this or that. You can include it. It's not that you cannot include it, but it will probably impinge on how we read the actual need. So again, my answer would be you can include everything, but try and narrate it so that you articulate and showcase how the need is connected to your project. Yeah, and I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that. Okay. I like all the questions coming in. So I'm going to go to the next question. About the one-page statement detailing all financial support received through the PhD program, would it be okay to include a chart or table? Yes, of course, yeah. So anything that helps anything that helps us read more quickly what you want to say, we obviously would welcome it. But so there is the budget statement, and that can be like, really quite, line by line, but then there is the other bit that is the narrative about the needs. And I think that's where we need you to tie the different points a bit together so we understand the meaning of those numbers. But yeah, we would welcome that very much, I think. And I'm just going to let you jump in whenever you want to add something, right? So then we have a question, a couple of questions. How long should the reference letter be maximum? And secondly, is there a maximum page count for the CV? So those are really good questions. So for the reference letter, I would say that many of your advisors might be very used to already write a letter, and very few of us would be interested in writing 10 pages, whatever. So I think somewhere between 1 and 3 pages is for sure enough, right? So it's more important that they touch on the same things that you need to touch. So if you can brief them on that. For the CV, also there, don't do more than 4 pages or whatever, but it can also be like 2 pages. So it's not the extensive academic CV where every place where you ever given a presentation, not everything needs to be in there, right? So it's just to get an overview of what you've done so far. But it can be the condensed, if you are in doubt, it's more the condensed than the extensive academic CV. Yeah. Okay, so when do applicants typically hear back from the committee? So deadline is September 1st. I'm just going to give you kind of the dates that we received, that we worked in. And I think it's first processed at ISA level, and then we as members of the committee receive the different packages. So I think somewhere last year was mid-November that we had the deadline for ourselves when we started discussing. So to have read everything and then discussing. So I would say it would be somewhere around December that you will probably be hearing. And then, like, if I remember correctly, disbursement of it was the beginning of the new calendar year. But and I don't know if we changed anything there. Yeah.
It might have changed. I mean, and I'm new to this, but the information I was given by ISA, I think that you get notified mid to late January, and that you're paid the funds in February. So it seems like it's shifted
Yeah.
forward a bit. So it's a little bit later than earlier.
Okay. Yeah. So that's good to keep in mind also when you think of your timings. So yeah, it would be like, let's say more February than the beginning of January. But it's the beginning of the year. But so try when you narrate when your needs are or the timeline of your needs, keep that in mind that it would be yeah, from February onwards, more or less. Thank you. Um, okay, next question. The timeline question. If we anticipate needing funding for only a portion of the calendar year, will that be detrimental to our application? No, not necessarily. First of all, there is the option of, I mean, I'm sure all of us can spend $5,000 and like in a short time, so I know it might not impact. But let's say if you say it's only till May, but if I look at my budget, I might need maybe 2005 or whatever. That can actually also be like a good thing. But it's not that you need to show that you need the money for exactly 12 months or something, right? So it's more that yeah, you try and narrate how working towards your completion would be supported with this amount of money. But the most important is that you're not finished before the money comes, right? So it's not a funding for expenses that you've already made retrospectively, kind of. So that's how I would think about the timeline in that sense. Um, so yeah, when our successful applicants announced, I think that's just been answered. So that's beginning. Keep in mind somewhere in January. Okay, if a student applies for a workshop grant, would they be considered for ISA dissertation completion grant? Yeah, I think those are two separate. First of all, it's very separate people deciding about this, but it's separate activities as well, right? So workshop grant is the workshops that precede the ISA conventions, I think. Whereas this is for your research. So yeah,
So it looks like Kat wants to answer. Maybe Kat, do you know?
Yeah, my impression is that all of what you just said is correct, that it's
mm, two different, yeah.
two different things. I don't think one has any bearing on the other. And like you said, I think it's two different sets of people deciding. And one is for the convention and the other is a more general
Yeah.
research based. Yeah.
And I think also in general, the fact that one of the criteria is to be a member of ISA, like we could not punish you for being an active member of the association. And, applying for a grant to do a workshop would, if anything, shine positively. But it is also the timings are different. And so I wouldn't worry about that. Okay, next questions. What are some of the things recipients in the past have used the money for? Can the funding be used for tuition to pay for dissertation hours or just research cost? So it's actually not even just research cost. So when you try and narrate your needs, you can do that, comprehensively. So let's say that you are in your final year, but all the funding of your institution already stopped, but you actually just need money to be able to sit in your expensive flat in London somewhere, and it doesn't have to be fancy. And you have, I don't know, childcare needs, whatever. And this $5,000 would tie you over for the few months that you need to write. So that is a need that is not even directly research cost. It's actually just the time and the money to write. But it can also be that, yeah, you say in the course of your research, but again, your research funding has stopped, but you understood that it's really important to add one particular research activity or that you need to do yeah, some extra field work or something like that. And then you explain why you need that. So in principle, tuition is just an expense that you have as a person doing a a PhD at that time, right? Um, so you can have an expansive understanding what your needs are. And it's so in the criteria you can see we don't say not for copy editing, but yes for this or that. It's up to you to narrate how you see your needs within the money available. That's how I would answer it, but I don't know, and if you have anything you want to add here.
No, but it looks like Kat might
Okay.
again.
Oh, sorry, I don't. I
Okay.
Oh,
don't. No,
okay.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I saw a comment of yours underneath. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that answers it. So have an expansive understanding of it, but also do understand that it's not just money that you could use, but you need to narrate a need. And that is one of the criteria. And obviously, I mean, our judgment of that, it is subjective, but that's also why every application is read by two people. And it's the weight in that, and so it's trying to really combine fairness in that sense, and we have conversations about these things, right? Um, okay, I will move on to the next question. I was wondering whether there are examples of projects or individuals that have been awarded this fellowship in recent years. Is there a webpage with the past recipients and project descriptions? I'd love to get a better sense of the types of projects your program typically supports. I don't, do we must announce somewhere, right? Where that's actually a good question. So I don't know if Kat could answer that, but in terms of, I'll first try and answer another aspect of this question. So it's important to keep in mind that it's not the type of projects in isolation on the basis of which we select this. It's also very much needs-based, right? So if you were to just look at what people are researching, obviously we're not also writing a blurb on what the people's needs are when it's a public-facing thing. So it would be a bit maybe misguided to think that we have preference for certain type of projects over others, because it's a combination of these three different aspects that weigh our understanding. And so it's a very big interaction between both the needs and the project. So, but still, I think it would be interesting to see whether you have access to who got this.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to, yeah, a caveat to don't think that, oh, if my project doesn't look like this one, I have less chances. Kat, go ahead.
Yeah, and as we talk, I'll try and find if there's a place on the website where we've announced the past recipients, and if I can find it, I'll pop it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Um, okay. Application reviewed on a rolling basis. No. So we don't start reading them until we receive them from headquarters, and that's not before the closing of the deadline on September 1st. And we receive them all in a batch. So I guess the meaning of that question is that if you send it on August 31st at, midnight, whatever, then yeah, you're not more disadvantaged than somebody who's doing it on July 2nd. That's it. The advantage of trying to do this on July 2nd means that maybe you can reapply, like you have the whole summer to think about it, right? Like, or to test run. So I would advise not to keep it until the very end of August. But in the way that we review them, is all together. Okay. Do you know if the grant will be taxed on the US side, as that would factor in the narrative budget? That's actually a good point. I don't think so, but yeah, I'm also not based in the US, neither is Anne, right? But
I can try and
I
find the answer for that
thank
too.
you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's never come up, but I think yeah, I think it would be dispersed as a grant. So maybe it's not an income, right? So I think my inclination is to think that it won't be, but yeah. That might also depend on your particular situation, but Kat will find out for us. Good question. No, so the thing is that oh sorry, can we request the link before July 1st to start preparing early, or is it only after July 1st? So it's only after July 1st that you won't, even if you send the email now, you won't get the link until July 1st anyway. But you won't get more information than what Anne shared, as in the information you have on the website is what you need to take as a guidance. So you can actually already start with these 4 documents that you make and share that information also with your recommendation letter writer. So you can actually prepare everything, and the secure link is just for you to upload your PDF document, right? So in a way, you don't need the link to start preparing, but you'll get the link only after July 1st. So next question is, I have been receiving national monthly stipend. What are the chances of selection for such candidates? So this is one of the reasons why we don't just ask you for a budget in an Excel sheet, but you have actually the chance to narrate it, right? Because this can be really different for many different people under many different circumstances, wherever you're writing from in the world, but also what your previous months have been or not. And so it would be important to explain that how, in spite of having that stipend, you still understand your needs. But it's not that automatically because you have that stipend that we would not consider you, right? So that's why you have a chance to narrate. And again, like I said, it's also always in connection with the other 2 criteria, being your project and what it speaks to, and also how it fits in the spirit of the of this scheme. Yeah. Then we are assessed on the quality of the PhD project. What does that mean? That's a good question, right? So we're obviously only assessing it on the quality of the quality of your narration, right? So in a way, it's the extent, it's how you manage to articulate what the project is about and how it speaks to international studies broadly understood. How innovative or not it is, how we read it as an important project, something like that. So in that sense, it's not very different from how you would write a PhD proposal and trying to get a place somewhere to do a PhD, right? But it's not that we have beforehand said like, oh, we prefer positivist versus non-positivist, or it has to be about the global side or not. So that's really open. So in a way, you're more judged on how good you are at selling the importance of your work. But that importance also doesn't mean, the usual, oh, nobody has done this before, I'm the best at this, whatever. No, it's like, how do you narrate the meaningfulness of your project and how you go about it and how all of that hangs together? So it's as subjective as grading essays, I guess. But again, that's one of the reasons why we really team up so that it's not just one person judging this on the basis of their preference or something, right? So yeah. I know, and you haven't done this, but I know you, I mean, we're trained to judge stuff, unfortunately, as our job. So yeah,
Yeah.
how do you envisage doing this? Or yeah, what are your thoughts on?
Yes. So, I mean, I imagine that it's the same. I've been on a bunch of different funding agencies, like making decisions about people's funding, right? For the, European Research Council, the National Science Foundation, the Swedish Research Council, and so forth. And so typically, right, I think like as Olivia said, it's not really, I mean, you can write about any number of topics and you can use whatever methods, right? But there needs to be clarity to the aim, right? It needs to be persuasive in the sense that it needs to be made compelling and interesting. You need to have a strong statement about what is the value added in some way, right? Like, is this a theoretically innovative dissertation? Is it an empirically innovative dissertation? Is it a methodologically innovative dissertation, right? And why does this dissertation matter? For
Yeah,
whom and how, right?
yeah,
So same types of assessment criteria that you typically get wherever you send your stuff to get funded, I would say.
yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, in addition to that as well, one can think also why does maybe the topic of your research also matter in the world, right? So, and I wanted to say political, but sometimes that's misunderstood. But like why would it matter for anyone to read your work? It can be indeed that you discover something nobody else did. That's academics care about that. But given the topic, it's also so much going on in the world. If you can tie it to things that are important, also those can be like quite useful for you to just think, how do you communicate why you think your research is important, right? So that's how I would advise you to think about that. So yeah, take the time to maybe rewrite a bit, like honing in how you would articulate it, but don't think that, oh, my topic might not be interesting or important enough. It's just about how you sell it to us, to put it very bluntly, right? Like, and it is important because otherwise you wouldn't have spent already so much time in it, on it. Yeah, so do I need to be a registered member of ISA to submit an application? Yeah, the answer is yes. And yeah, sometimes because that's also not very cheap. It's quite interesting to think like applying for funding, but you need to make an expense. But yeah, that's the one. So also just to because it's organized from ISA. I will move to the next question. Can international students studying in the US apply? Yeah, I don't think there is any problem with that because it's really like you can literally be anywhere on the planet and apply for this. It's more that you are attached to a institution. Yeah. Could we please clarify the duration of the funding? Would it cover the final 2 years of the program, or is it funding awarded for one calendar year only? Yeah. So it is a lump sum, right? And you need to articulate for a particular period of time what needs you might have. And so when we say indicatively, like usually because the word completion is in the name, is when we say the last 2 years, it just means that you can't just have started your PhD. And I know in the US you have a PhD program first where you're doing classes and then you go into your PhD writing process. So it's more that. Whereas in Europe, for instance, the moment you start your PhD, it's already the writing process, right? So it's about knowing that you are towards the end of writing your PhD, not at the beginning. But we don't, for instance, give you 5,000 now, and you indicated that it's for 2 years, and then we give you another 5,000. No, it's just one lump sum, and you need to decide whether you are literally still needing to do 2 years. And so in your narration, you need to cover that whole period. Or if you are already in your final year, and the same sum you're going to be using in that shorter period of time. So you kind of decide in your narration what type of period it covers. But when we speak about the 2 last years, it just means don't try and narrate something for the beginning of your research. I think that's what it means. Okay. Funding from institution, does that include the very small stipend we get for doing research or teaching assistant work? So the point is that you need to disclose all the sources of income that you have, right? So the distinction between a bursary where you get like living expenses for every year versus the $500 they give you to go to ISA, which covers nothing. So you include all of it in funding from institution, but obviously not they don't weigh equally when we think about your needs, right? So rather than thinking what do I include or not, just include everything. But in your narrative, obviously, there is a difference between, I don't know, getting $20,000 every year for the last 3 years or getting a small research fund. But yeah, just for clarity, include everything. Okay. If we intend to defend dissertations in the spring of 2027, are we still suitable candidates for applications? Yes, right? Because the spring of so Again, in a way, that's also, and I know we always come back to the narrative thing, right? But when you narrate your needs and you start counting more or less from, January, February 2027, if by spring you mean early March, and if you are in a system where once you defend, like in Belgium, once you defend, that's literally also when you graduate. It's different than, let's say, in the UK, where once you defend, they still might send you home for 3 or 6 months to rewrite it and to do the corrections. So that's why we can't give like a blanket answer to this. So really try and think, when is this praying? In what system am I? And can I justify needing, or how would I justify needing up to $5,000 when you're narrating your application at the moment? Yeah, that's how I would answer this. Okay. The question keep being 17, but we've already answered 21, so we're doing very great. No, it's really good actually. And also this is being recorded, so I think for many people who couldn't join, this will also be useful. So, and next question is wondering whether ISA membership is a strict requirement at the application stage, or whether applicants who are awarded funding could obtain membership afterwards. Given the financial constraints many doctoral students face, this would be helpful to know. Yeah, I think we actually made that reflection, but I think it's just it functions as an eligibility criteria at the time of application, and even something also at the time when you receive it. So unfortunately, it's a hard criterion at the time of application. And it's also way too expensive, but I wanted to say off the record, but it's being recorded, so so we can't really say that out loud, but I just did. So, a question to clarify: is it advisable to submit an application if you're planning on defending between May and August 2027? Yeah, I would apply. I mean, you put some time in putting this together, but there is no harm in trying. But like I said, it's most important that whatever sum of money that you're envisaging asking for, that you have a realistic narration on how much you would need for that period of time, right? And because it's different aspects altogether, we make the compound judgment. But yeah, so it's about how you manage to put in a narration how your needs appears for that period of time. But it's not that we say like, oh no, this person won't be needy until the end of the calendar year, so let's not give it to them. It can be really that you just need this one thing to tie you over, and you manage to explain and articulate well how that is. Yeah, we won't be counting in terms of who needs it for the longest. So yeah, good question. For the CV, what are some of the main qualities, credentials that the committee might be looking for? I'm trying to think how we did that last year. So I think the role of the CV is just to get, because usually when you apply for something, you have a whole place where you can talk about yourself. Let's say in an application letter, you would like introduce yourself and then narrate what you've done before, whatever. Whereas here we just ask you to focus on your project on the one hand and on the financial budgetary narrative on the other. So the CV is the place where we can get at one glance an idea of where you're writing from, what your specialties have been, maybe with some work and other experiences you have done. If you want to indicate maybe that there was a big gap due to parental leave or whatever, like it gives us a timeline, but it also allows us to place you in institutions geographically. So I would say, yeah, just think what you usually would put in a CV. But what we are looking is just a quick understand because, we get hundreds of applications sometimes. So just to get a quick understanding of who are we reading. So that's what I would say. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. Does our dissertation topic serve a specific role, or is it merely driven by necessity? So it's not the topic that serves a role. It's how you narrate the quality or the importance of your research. So like I said, we don't have a specific, prior preference for any topic, apart from the fact that it cannot be something that is clearly from a completely different discipline or field of study that does not cross borders, right? So international studies, widely understood, is really important. And also, it's not just merely driven by necessity. So think of the different ways this was weighed. So the weighing is important. So we still give 40% to the topic, not the topic, but the quality of the research, and then 30% to the need. So, and then 30 to is it 30? Yeah. How it's fitting into the logic of the grant. So think of the three of them together, but with slightly more importance to how you articulate the importance of your project. But yeah, once because we have like, for instance, like when we were selecting, there's a lot of projects that are really interesting. And if we can't really choose, because yeah, in the end, it's not about just, what research do we find most interesting, but that's where the necessity thing really comes in, right? Because that is also the defining factor where if two projects are equally interesting, then we will look, okay, which of the two candidates would be most helped with this grant? So that's how necessity shows up. But if one only has necessity, but let's say you did not really invest in really explaining what your topic is about, how you go about it, the passion you have for it, then yeah, then it's difficult also to just focus on this is a person in need, right? So it really goes together. Yeah. It's so funny. We just talked about this. So what are the policies regarding generative AI in proposal writing? Full disclosure, we don't have regulations at the moment. Maybe, yeah, if Kat has language on this, please feel free to share. And we were also thinking it's not that you are applying with original like we're not judging you on original research or whatever, right? So it's not the same as writing a paper and then pretending that you've written it yourself, even though Claude did it. So yeah, I think it's probably in the order of how you write emails or whatever. But yeah, so there is an element of personal judgment, but I also, from experience, obviously having reading a lot of students' work that is AI generate, there is something about AI generate that doesn't always work in your favor, right? Some of it, like to clean up your language or whatever, is different. But so yeah, I'm not going to be prescriptive about this, but I don't think we have hard rules at the moment. Yeah, and I don't know if I addressed this well actually, because we both of us don't really use it
Yeah.
properly. So it's
No, I don't have anything to add. I do think that, we should say that we don't know if ISA might have something that's organization-wide that would apply to this fellowship as well. So that might be the case, but it's something that we hadn't thought of because it wasn't the case last year.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
But
sorry that we don't have a more, but Kat, maybe, Kat, do you know, like, are
Yeah,
there,
I'm unaware if we have a general policy regarding AI, so I will check on that as well.
thank you.
Um, and if we do, then I'll try and I'll have a discussion internally about updating the page before
exactly.
July
Yeah.
1st to
Yeah.
reflect sort of whatever our general policy is. I agree that there seems to be, I think, a difference between having AI just generate the application material for you and having Grammarly make sure that you're not spelling a word wrong, but I'd have to check what our if we have an official policy for this.
Yeah. In any case, it will be in a fair way in the sense that if there is a regulation, it will be on the side by July 1st so that if it's the same for everyone. And we won't just add those rules halfway through, right? Um, but yeah, so at the moment we don't have. Thank you, Kat. And I'll go to the next question. Does the funding come directly to the applicant or through the institution? Good question. Kat, do you know?
No, but I can check on that too.
Yeah, I have the impression that is the applicant, but I'm not really sure actually.
I think it's the applicant as well,
Right?
but I'd
Yeah,
have to check, yeah.
yeah. Good question. What are the criteria for assessing the quality of the dissertation project? I think we addressed this, right? So it's more or less, I mean, I hope we did, but part of it is obviously subjective, but it's not that we're doing a ticking the box exercise where we want certain types of projects. It's about your narration of how you bring across the importance of your projects to the field. So try and think of how you would explain the importance of your project to us as a community of ISA people, right? Like it is, so try and think about it as the field large, but and you can also think very specifically maybe some of the approaches in within the little circles within ISA that you identify with, like all of that really, we don't have any preferences that are preset, but we do need to be convinced by how you tell us.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think a simple way also to think about it, if you want to play it safe, I think a good way to think about it is, again, like clarity, right? Like, what is my research question? Like, what is the question? What is the project? And then try to think of it in terms of, like, what is the contribution to existing scholarship? Like, what is it that I do that someone else hasn't already done? And why is it important that I do that, right? Is it
yeah,
because, again, like, is it because I add something new theoretically? Is it that I add something new empirically? Is it that I add something new methodologically? Maybe all of those, right? And
yeah,
then once you've shown like what the importance is of your very clear project to existing scholarship, you should ideally also be able to say something, why does this matter to the world, right? Not
yeah,
just academia, but like the world around us. I
yeah,
think that would be the safe way to narrate this, right? That's typically
mm,
how you do it, like in the funding, other funding applications. Part of that is maybe not the why does it matter to the world, but the other parts is also how if you're doing a book proposal or if you write a journal article, like it's the same components, right? So
yeah,
these are good tricks for you to bring with you, whatever you do. Clarity
yeah,
of the question, and then again, what am I contributing to what academic conversation do I want to pitch in? And
yeah,
what am I saying that they're not saying already, right? Like, what is it? What do I bring to the table? And again, in
yeah,
terms of theory, empirics, or methods,
yeah,
or real world relevance,
yeah,
right? So if you just think of it in those terms and try to narrate as clearly and forcefully and persuasively as you can, and try to think of it, imagine that you're writing for someone that might be a little bit skeptical of, right? So try to write that like to convince, an argumentative type of thing, right? We're most likely going to be interested in what you do, so I don't think you should be thinking that
yeah,
we're
too
right.
defensive.
But
Yeah.
it's a good trick, like when you envision your audience, is to think that, oh, I'm gonna, I love my topic, and I'm going to show you why my topic is so important for academia and for the world, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now I was thinking about something. Yeah, so sometimes people feel uncomfortable making claims that they are new or they're the first ones to do it, but then it's also completely fine to explain why we need to repeat certain things and why I'm doing it today is different from doing it yesterday, or why doing it from your part of the world is, So
Yes,
so yeah, you can just try and write as gen and like from experience, right? Even if people just go through the motions, sometimes it doesn't speak, but just try and write as honestly as you can about why you are passionate about what you do. And that tends to, and then do it well. Yeah, and also try and not, if you have to choose between super jargon and writing clearly, always go for clearly, short
yes,
sentences, accessible, because when people read you that need to judge your project, and if they don't understand it, when people don't feel smart, it's not a good thing, right? So write clearly, even if you feel like it's too simple or simplifying it. So write it for a general academic audience that might not be a specialist in what you do.
yeah.
That's
And I
usually,
do think that every project, there's something new to it, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be motivated to do it. Like,
yeah,
if you could learn everything you needed to learn about a topic from existing scholarship, why are you doing your dissertation, right? I don't think you could even motivate yourself. So all of us, we're doing, some of the things are like repeat, or we address the same question maybe as someone else has, but there's something about what they did that we don't find, either maybe it's not enough, or maybe they only look at some part of the world, and or they look at it from a theoretical or an epistemological perspective that we find it's helpful, but it's limited, right? It's just one way to see it, or whatever, right? Like in some way, what you're doing is going to be different from what everyone else has done. And the persuasiveness of that, right? Of like showing us what that is.
yeah.
So don't be afraid to say what's new with your project, I think, because we all do something new, right? And we all build on everyone else. So it's
Yeah,
not like we
exactly.
come and like we don't, we're all whatever, like, yeah, receivers of wisdom from those before us.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
we also try to bring our little piece to the conversation, right?
Yeah. So yeah, you can set yourself off to what you've read, or you can say, I'm joining this and this is what I add, right? Like however
Yeah,
you feel comfortable writing about this. But yeah, I think mostly it's because sometimes we're also trying to write the gap in the literature where it like the importance of a project is only built on how we present the others lacking. So you need to
yeah.
find a balance in that where you like there needs to be a value in and of itself, and then you engage with the others to show. Um, yeah. Okay, still 13 questions. Um, so the quality. If a student were awarded this funding, would they still be permitted to seek additional funding from other sources to help cover living research expenses during the final year of study? Um, I think the answer is not yes or no, but what is important is that in your narration of your funding, like you need to disclose everything. But so when you write your budget of what you have, but also what you might be seeking. So yeah, the period that you cover in how you narrate the funding that you're applying for with us needs to cover everything that you envisage to use. Because let's say if you don't include it, or if you're not going to apply for anything else, that impacts our understanding of your needs. But also, if applying for something else makes what you're asking us much more realistic, that also, impacts our understanding of how fitting it is for the project, right? So it's not necessarily positive or negative in how you present your dossier. But I would say as a golden rule, just disclose everything. That would be my answer. But and I don't know if you have anything else to add to this. Okay. Um, so we are assessed on the quality of the PhD project 40%. What does that mean? That just means that we put a score on that, right? And then a score also on how it's fitting with the project, and then a score on the need. And so then we add up all those scores and then we rank them, and then there is a top something that comes out of this. So it's two people doing that. So it's the combined ranking of those scores. And then let's say that whatever, depending on what people ask, but that there is like, let's say 10 projects that come out on top. It's built on the adding up of those scores. So that's how we actually weigh. And then within that, we have a discussion. So it's not just numeric, but then we have a discussion on, how do we distribute it and who stays in this top 10 or who falls out of it because of this or that, right? So that's how the score works. So it's trying to quantify something that is actually also kind of a slightly more subjective assessment, but to make it not just subjective, like, oh, I feel like this about this. And also to make it comparable between us as assessors. That's how the 40% works. So it means that in the final number, the the quality of the project has weighted more, has received more weight in our judgment. Yeah. Can the use of the funds change if your needs change by the time it is received? For example, what if you are able to find funds to field a survey by then, but use the funds for other expenses such as data storage or analysis? So again, in your narration, try and be expansive. So maybe in this example, just put survey, storage, and analysis maybe under one heading where you narrate research specific expenses, and then you can shift a little bit within that. But if it is between basic income to buy food versus a survey versus child, like that might be of a different order, right? So think again expansively about what are the different needs you might have. What are the expected funding applications that you have in mind during that time, and give the full account, and then clearly identify how the, for instance, $5,000 would come in there. Yeah.
I'll
So
chime in about, yeah.
yeah,
So I heard back from finance first to the question a while ago about if it goes directly to an individual or an institution, it goes directly to the individual, not through your institution. And for taxing, I believe the answer is a little complicated, so that they asked that if anyone has questions about how the grant is taxed, for them to follow up. If you can email fellowship@isanet.org, which is the email address where you also request the application link. So you can email that email and ask, I think pose the question to them, and a member of the finance team will be able to get back to you on the details of uh, that situation. So yeah, I believe those were the two questions, outstanding questions. But if I've missed one, please let me know.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Another really good question that we didn't think of. So one of the committee members is faculty member at my school and in my department. Is the review done blindly? It's not, because we literally have your CVs in front of us. But I think we can maybe, in the distribution, we could maybe try and keep in mind, and because we have just probably just a random distribution of a stack, like we divided amongst all of us. But it might be good that we can just have a quick look first. If there is institutional overlaps, then we can shift them around. So I think it would be good if we take note of that. It's a good idea.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for raising that. So I've taken note, and I'll make sure that like the distribution is such that faculty members will not be evaluating people from their own department and won't see the application like until it's in the ranking, and then we'll deal with it in some way.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Great question. Oh, not a question, but thanks for answering the question. Okay. Okay. In continuation of the national scholarship, do I need to mention that I have dependents on me, including spouse and a kid? Is it fine to mention apart from the merits of the project? Yes. So again, in your budget narration, in your narration of need, right? Like just paint the context in which you have your expenses, and obviously, if you need to spend money just on yourself or on a whole family, that actually does impact it, right? So feel free to share there the context of your expenses, and that includes details about dependence to your budget, I would say. Yeah. Good question. Sorry, I love this question. So what if you are able to successfully complete and defend your dissertation before spending all the funding? I actually don't have an answer to this, because I assume it doesn't happen very often, right? But I don't know. I'm sure you can send some of the money back, but I don't have an answer to this. And or Kat, I don't know if you have, but I think one of the reasons why we ask you to write a meticulous narration of your needs, including a timeline in that, right, is that it should be kind of unlikely that that would happen. But if it does happen, I actually don't know. And do you have?
I don't know either. Kat, do you know? This sounds more technical. Like, what would
No,
they
yeah,
do? Did they need to return the money, or?
I could ask again. I don't know if I'll get an answer before the end of this, since it seems like we're wrapping up soon. But
Yeah.
you can email the fellowship email for a question, since it is more finance related, and it's sort of run through the finance department. Um, I agree that this seems unlikely to me, that it would be a possibility. Um, but yes, if your question is about, I think, more of how the money distribution works, and then I would email the fellowship email, because that's more on the tech side or the logistic side of the finance department, and less to do with, I think, the criteria of the way the grant is
Yeah.
assessed.
It's also very honest.
It
It's a
is.
great,
It's very honest. It's
very honest.
commendable.
That's why I was laughing, actually. I should have laughed. But yeah, also just keep in mind, you don't have to ask for the full 5,000, right? And that does not, um, shine negatively on your need if you ask for 2,000, right? It just means that we are also able to give maybe 2,000 to another person. So don't feel like you have to ask for five to show that you have a need. But if you doubt that you would need all the money, then ask for a smaller budget. That's also another thing to think about. The average applications we receive and how many awards do we award on average, right? So I think the year before I started, it was like not that many, and that's why I think the acceptance rate was like 47, and then last year it was hundreds, so that's why maybe it was more 10%. So that kind of also answers, I think, the next question is the average is really depending on how many applicants we've had and how many of them ask for the full 5,000 and how many of those that end up in the, let's say, top 10 or top whatever, ask for the full five or if it's lower. And then also depending on the budget we receive from ISA that year. So that's why it's really difficult for us to put a number on it. I think last year it was around 10 or 9 or 10 or 11 maybe.
There will be fewer most likely this year. So somewhere like a minimum of 6, but maybe more if we give smaller
Yeah.
grants. So 6
Yeah.
to 8, maybe something like that.
So yeah, it's not a lot, right? But again, it's not a huge application. I mean, comparative to many others, it's not a super onerous, but so I would say it's really worth trying, and we're
It's
willing to read
definitely
through
worth
all these
trying.
pages. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's also not like, oh, if I apply, I have 50% chance. It's not like that at all.
No,
Um,
but the process is so much easier than so many other application processes.
yeah,
So that should be encouraging, I think, that we're not asking that much material from you and the applications are short.
yeah,
So it's absolutely worth, and it's, the success rates are not bad, right,
mm,
compared to other funding
yeah,
sources.
exactly. Yeah, and the disbursement is quite straightforward and stuff. So,
Mhm.
um, for the questions that you are checking on, where should we look for those answers once they're found?
Yeah. Yeah, so I put answers in the chat. I would say with any and I a few minutes ago I kind of read them out loud. But if you have
Yeah,
any outstanding questions, I would say to
mm,
follow up with that fellowship at isanet.org email.
yeah,
Um or we're always our emails programming at isanet.org, and we'll get you the answers to any questions that might be still unanswered
yeah.
before the application process.
Um, so can a PhD student who is in the final year officially, who is unable to finish the dissertation due to various reasons, apply? So I think any answer to this question would need more details, obviously. So in general, if you're in your final year, you can apply unless you will graduate, let's say next month, right? Like so you need the graduation, the formal graduation needs to be well beyond, let's say, February next year. Um, but then the various reasons, like, yeah, that will really depend on what the situation is. So I would, again, really advise you to reach out via email, and then we'll try to have more tailored answer to that question. And I see from the same person how many candidates usually selected. I think we just answered that. Okay, please describe about the remaining 30% of the weighing. 40 for quality of project, 30 for necessity, and what's the 30 other percent about? Please describe. So you will find that as well on the website. It was also on the slides, and it's the thing under the vague name suitability, how it suits to the actual grant. Um, and so I think on the one hand, we have this thing of, yeah, the completion thing. So like we said, it's not at the beginning of your research, but it's a completion grant, dissertation one. The preferences or the privileging of, let's say, if we have, again, 10 projects that are equally amazing and the needs are equally explained and they kind of like, comparable to each other, then this last 30% will make us look like who are the people asking for this. And it's not an identity thing, but it is maybe historically where you are in the world and the extent to which these are people or candidates that tended to not be like, I don't know, 100 years ago, we would not have found them in our community of international relations scholars, for instance, right? And so when I say it's not an identity, I literally mean that it's more a relational or positionality thing. So, for instance, myself, born and raised in Belgium, but I might look like this, whatever, right? So it's not a tick the box like, oh, Black woman, hence for sure. But it's probably also trying to think if my colleagues in Rwanda, where I'm originally from, and we're competing with the same project and the same types of necessity, we might choose and say like, yeah, actually, scholars from Rwanda tend to be less present than somebody who is doing their PhD at LSE at the moment, right? So but again, it's not a science and it's not, but that's why we try to wait. But so and then the other thing obviously is that the project, which is not just quality, but it needs to speak to international studies. So it cannot, so if one is clearly a super sociological, just feminist approach to something, but maybe we snuck in two countries to make it international, and another is clearly a global studies project about something. Again, if all the other criteria are the same, then we would privilege that. So don't try and think of it too much as maths, but it's more like for us to have a guidance that we don't just run with our gut feeling about stuff, but that there is something that is comparable amongst all of us. That's how I would describe it. Can we include a field trip into the budget? Yes, you can. So as we said, almost everything, can be argued as what you would use the money for. Try and think how what you would spend it on also translates in a narration of need, right? So it's much more important. So it's not that anything is excluded beforehand, but in a narration, we're really looking to understand how you won't be able to finish like your project, or it would be very difficult without the support rather than, oh, I'm actually kind of okay, but I also want to do a field trip. But you can do field trip, right? So, but thinking of need rather than just am I allowed to expend or not. Um, and that's it. The last one is a thank you. So now we also really thank you for being here. It's really encouraging to see so much interest, actually. I'm completely exhausted answering all the questions, but yeah, it will give us also energy when we're reading through all your applications
Yes.
to see so much interest. So we really encourage you.
Yes, thank you to everybody for asking such wonderful. I mean, these are really good questions that allowed us to really provide, or us, I should say, Olivia, to provide answers. I wouldn't have turned this over to you if I had realized that there would be 45 questions for you to ask. So very grateful that you took took this on. And to whoever the person is that wrote the very sweet compliment in the comments, you made my day. So thank you so much. So this is very good. And if you have additional questions, always you can always email me as the chair of the committee, and I will try at the best of my capacity to answer, or I will send you in the direction of someone that can answer you. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. For any
Very good.
outstanding questions, feel free to contact us. And thank you so much. That was a lot of questions, but yeah, it's good. It shows a great interest in the fellowship, which is awesome.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, wonderful. We look forward to reading your stuff when it comes in.
Yeah. Everyone
Take
have a
Yeah.
great
care.
rest of your day.
Yeah,
Yes, you
and a good
too.
summer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good. All right. Bye, you guys.